Esteemed judges, I have a story that I'd like you to listen to. It is a story of Mrs. Smith, whose mother has recently had a stroke. As Mrs. Smith makes her twice-daily trip to the nursing home, she ponders a difficult dilemma. For 6 months, her mother has lived in a nursing facility. Her mother still requires therapy 3 times a week, and she still needs help with most daily, simple activities. Mrs. Smith's problem today is that Medicare coverage stopped 30 days ago. And at about $70 per day, plus the cost of a babysitter for the kids and the Medicare deductible, the money from Smith's modest savings account is about to run out. She wonders how her mother will cope outside the nursing home. Her stroke left her almost unable to speak and totally unable to walk. Fortunately, she will in time be able to communicate verbally again, with extended therapy. Actually, Mrs. Smith's mother was lucky to have her family there when she was in need. Her fictional story illustrates the very real problem today in our country. That problem is that we are becoming complacent about the care of our elders. Even worse, as the baby boom rapidly approaches retirement, we are spending the very money which is supposed to support those elders. In her time of crisis, Mrs. Smith was lucky that she had Medicare to pay her hospital bills, for that was her only insurance. In the future, will all Americans still be able to count on the government to help them when they are in need, as was Mrs. Smith? Even today, Medicare coverage is barely adequate for many people. For an elderly person below the poverty line, the $1,370 amount which Medicare has set as its maximum patient outlay may still eat up a large chunk of a Social Security payment, or force them to go without food. If this amount takes up just one Social Security payment, that will mean an entire month after he or she leaves the hospital that the patient will have to cope without that money. That may mean cutting back on certain luxuries, being late with the rent, or even going without food for several days, just to save that money. What is also disturbing is that the lack of funds for Medicare patients is forcing hospitals out of business as well as hurting the aged, which will hurt us even more in the future, as the beds now being lost to red ink will be needed for the influx of the new older Americans. One writer reports that of the 400 hospitals that closed last year, most of the closures were at least partly due to a lack in Medicare payments. The same source also said that hospitals lose money on half of the Medicare patients they treat. Another source explains that overall, Medicare covers only about half of the costs of the elderly for medical care. What I feel is needed today to keep the elderly's golden years from turning to rust is more support from the government. The fundamental dedication and desire necessary to ensure the future of our nation's elderly is already present in society. With government help, that dedication could realize its full potential for successfully helping the elderly. What is most disturbing to me is the short-sightedness of the government by not adequately funding these programs today. By not providing basic in-home services for all elderly, the government often forces those people into unnecessary and expensive nursing facilities, which cost more money and may even be worse for the patients. By not providing adequate financial support, the government forces impoverished elderly to live in unsafe and unhealthy conditions, contributing to the health problems which eventually put them in the hospital and strain already inadequate medical resources. A small investment in preventive care to allow an older person to keep working, even major surgery or replacement surgery, can benefit the system in the long run. With fewer young workers to pay into the system in the coming decades, the need is even more critical. There is a potential to turn the elderly into a self-supporting segment of society if a small investment is made today to ensure that they can remain productive members of our nation. We are at a crossroads today. The problem of inadequate medical care and impoverishment in the elderly is not yet at epidemic proportions, but the sheer numbers of people who will be over the age of 65 in 50 years will overwhelm the system if we continue down our present short-sighted policies. Thank you.